I am going to read from this was my grandma's book, my Grandma Krejci. I loved going to Grandma Krejci's house, and she'd always have food. I mean, she fed, 10 people shows up, she cooks for 40. Whenever you show up on surprise, she said, Eddie, go to the store. Because she would send Eddie to the store, my grandpa, to go get stuff. So one of the things I remember from Grandma's house is her dumplings. And I love them. And apparently my dad didn't. He said they thought they were too dense. But I was talking to my mom, and I thought that if my mom would have cooked them all the time, maybe I wouldn't like them so much. But I loved them when Grandma used to make them. And they were pretty dense. They were pretty thick dumplings. So there was a ton of recipes in this book. And as I looked through it to plan out if I do this every Thursday, I could do a whole year just out of this book. But I'm going to mix it up and do several books. This book is Bohemian American Cookbook by the Automatic Printing Company, Omaha, Nebraska. And the date, I have a cheat sheet here, is 1945, I think. I wrote this all down this morning, and I look over and my screen died. 1947. This is backwards because of my camera, and I like to do these live, so you're going to see it backwards. So as I was looking through this book, trying to figure out how I want to play my Throwback Thursdays cookbook reads, is I don't want to read a long recipe. I'll post the recipe after the video. But when I read the recipe, all of you type underneath hashtag the good, the bad, the ugly. So if it's good, type hashtag the good. If it's a bad recipe, hashtag the bad. And if it is such a bad recipe, we need to throw it all the way back to 1947, push the ugly. And at the end of each recipe, after they go a few days, I can put on my recipe card the good, the bad, or the ugly based on what you all do. And I'll do this for a few weeks, see how you like it. Make sure you tell me how you like it. It sounded like a lot of fun and a great way for me to use my cookbooks. So anyway, in this book, I looked up the dumpling recipes and found a good one. But when I paged through it, though, one of my examples of the ugly, which I might read sometime in the future. Where is it? I had it marked. Here's my whole dumpling page. And there is actually a dumpling recipe. Cottage cheese dumplings. Number 2. The only thing worse about the cottage cheese dumpling is the number 2. That means there's probably, a number 1. I'll have to read one of these sometime in the future, and we can decide whether it's good, bad, or ugly. As I'm looking through it too, there's several cooking terms I haven't heard of before or haven't heard of in a long time. So I always want to make sure I look at my cooking terms. And I've come to find out there's not much of a glossary in most of these, but there's tips for the housewife. So I will read tips from the housewife too, but to end. But so let me pull my page up here, and I'm going to read the dumpling recipe. And I can't see who's on, but hello. Okay, I picked potato dumplings, number 2. This sounds like the most like what I remember Grandma fixing. I don't know if this was the recipe, but it sounds like it. So potato dumplings, number 2, and underneath they have this is a translated cookbook from Bohemia, and they had the non-translated underneath. And I thought, well, maybe I'll try to say it. No, there's no way. I might, I'd probably butcher that, and that would be the ugly. Anyway, potato dumplings, number 2. Boil 6 medium-sized potatoes. Peel while hot and roll on the board with a rolling pin. Then form into a heap. Make a well in the middle. Pour in 2 beaten eggs, a dash of salt, and a cup of flour. I wonder if they must be cooled by the time we put the eggs in, because I imagine if they're still hot, those eggs would cook. You add a dash of salt, cup of flour. Knead together and roll, adding more flour so that the mixture is quite stiff. Cut into 6 pieces. Make dumplings and boil in boiling salted water. When done, sprinkle with melted butter and fried minced onions. And that sounds pretty simple. There's a when I look at the very first dumpling recipe actually gives more detail. I'll have to read through that. Um, it talks about how you boil your dumplings. Let's see, dumplings number one, and I didn't include this on the recipe I'm going to post. Um, Beat eggs in a bowl, add a cup and a half of milk. Oh, this is a completely different one. And it talks about what size to make them. And then here's the boiling part. I noticed that a lot of these recipes, they assume you already know how to cook. And they're just telling you what ingredients to put in. But they must boil consistently, but not too rapidly. This applies to the manner of boiling dumplings in general. Though the time may vary, dumplings served with meat should be torn apart with 2 forks. Cutting with a knife impairs the lightness. This is a lighter dumpling recipe. The one I read is likely not too light. And sprinkle with fried minced onions or fried breadcrumbs and melted butter. So it really does assume that you already know quite a bit about how to cook this stuff. Anyway, and so I want to do one last read out of here before I say goodbye, and then I will post the recipe. Let's see, they got farina dumplings. I looked at all these dumpling recipes. Fresh prune dumplings. But we need the good, hashtag the good, hashtag the bad, or hashtag the ugly to go with these dumplings that I just read. Potato dumplings number 2. Now to the tips for the housewife. I found one that I want to read. And I'm thinking about housewives back then and housewives now. Because housewives are kind of an obsolete word. All those, I've marked my page. Where is it? There it goes. Hints to the housewife. There are several hints, and they're not as bad as you might imagine. So I found one that's very timely and dated. Stains from axle grease or tar should be soaked in kerosene. And I thought, he should not be coming home with stains from axle grease on his good clothes, or he can just wash them himself. Anyway, I will see you next week for Throwback Thursday. Let me know what you think, and I will probably be more comfortable next week. And maybe I'll do those backdrops. I have some really great vintage aprons and vintage tablecloths, so I'll work on my backdrop for next week and be a little more relaxed instead of my desky thing going here. Y'all have a nice evening.